to see the Statue of Liberty, as you will, over the next 4 days from so many angles and so many different lights. There in the foreground of your picture, at Battery Park in Manhattan, among the hundreds of thousands of people who will come over Liberty Weekend, and they're one of the tour boats, hesitant at the moment because the U.S. Coast Guard has closed off the channel now between the Statue of Liberty and where we are on Governor's Island, as President Reagan and President Mitterrand of France are about to come and join the opening ceremony.
Ladies and gentlemen,
there is another lady who shares the history of the Statue of Liberty, although she certainly didn't know that that would happen. Her name is Emma Lazarus, and it's her words that are inscribed on a tablet inside the Statue of Liberty. Sandra Van Oker tells us more about this lady.
Her poem graces one of the world's most familiar symbols of freedom, the Statue of Liberty. It captures an era in our nation's history that few writers or poets have equaled. The words belong to Emma Lazarus. The voice is Charlton Heston's.
Here at the sea-washed sunset gates shall stand a mighty woman with a torch, whose flame is the imprisoned lightning, and her name, Mother of Exiles.
Emma Lazarus wrote that poem, The New Colossus, in 1883, 3 years before the statue's unveiling. She wrote it for a fundraising auction at New York's Academy of Music to help raise money for the statue's pedestal. The pedestal where her famous words now reside. The poem, by the way, sold for $1,500. She was born in New York in 1884 to a wealthy and prominent Jewish family. The daughter of a successful industrialist, she led an isolated life, a stranger to the hardships of the millions of immigrants that flooded through New York Harbor. I always will be loyal to my race, she once wrote, but I feel no religious fervor in my soul. It was the mass of Jewish refugees fleeing the pogroms of Russia that historians say swelled her consciousness as a Jew. She and her poetry were transformed. Her words spoke to the tens of millions of immigrants of every race and nationality that came to America with hopes of a better life.
Keep, ancient lands, your storied pomp, cries she with silent lips. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed, to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door.
Emma Lazarus would never know the importance that her poem holds or the spirit that her words symbolize. Her poem was not placed at the base of the Statue of Liberty until almost 20 years after her death. But to this day, it still stands as a tribute to her and to the idea of liberty.
The first light that Emma Lazarus's huddled masses saw was not the Statue of Liberty. It was a light similar to this one on a Coast Guard lightship, like this one, which is the Nantucket II, which was retired in 1984 after serving for many years on Nantucket shoals about 100 miles to the northeast of here. The lightship was the first glimmer of liberty they saw. The second was the Ambrose lightship off New York Harbor, and then they saw the Statue of Liberty. Those lamps are now gone, but the Statue of Liberty will be lit tonight. Barbara?
Thank you, Sandra. A perfectly beautiful shot of a fireboat in New York Harbor, and later tonight you'll hear horns from all the boats as the lights go on and the President unveils the Statue of Liberty and lights its torch. He will also be presenting medals of liberty, and it's almost about to begin. The audience is quiet and expectant.
Almost as if, Barbara, I think they understand, as we certainly do, that people are here to celebrate an idea, not just an event. I was thinking just a little while ago about Auguste Bartholdi. He is the Frenchman who designed and sculpted the Statue of Liberty, and when he set out for the New World in 1871 to New York Harbor, he was looking for a place, that island as it turns out, on which to set his contribution to friendship between France and the United States and peace of admiration for the New World. Now, we know in this day and age, all of you across the country are not so kindly disposed to New York as we'd like you to be this evening. But remember what Auguste Bartholdi wrote in 1871. It is indeed the New World. And when I landed here, I knew it was the idea that my friends in Europe had told me about. We're looking forward to the opening ceremonies. We hope you'll stay with us. I'm Peter Jennings for Barbara Walters. We hope you have a good evening.
Ladies and gentlemen, to conduct the Liberty Orchestra in his composition Liberty Fanfare, written especially for this occasion, Mr. John Williams. Ladies and gentlemen, from Governor's Island in New York Harbor to all the people of the world, welcome to the opening ceremonies of Liberty Weekend.
John Williams, the conductor of the Boston Pops, the conductor for this evening as this opening ceremonies begin here on the shores of New York Harbor.
the President of the French Republic, and Madame Francois Mitterrand.
President Mitterrand, elected as the President of France in 1981 for a 7-year term, who comes here to share the honors of the spotlight with President Reagan this Liberty Weekend for many reasons. Because French-American history goes back to the Revolutionary War, French assistance, because it was France which gave the Statue of Liberty to this country 100 years ago tomorrow, and because President Mitterrand and President Reagan have business to discuss, which they will do tomorrow, after they have reviewed together the International Naval Armada. Ruffles and flourishes.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States and Mrs. Reagan.
The President who has done so much to give the United States the measure of spirit which it presently has about itself, and who tomorrow will come down the Hudson River on board the USS Iowa to review the ships of the 21 nations who've come here to pay tribute to the United States and to the Statue of Liberty. Going to the presidential box where, on a number of occasions this evening, he shall be the center of the spotlight. And here in what we might call Liberty Stadium for this evening,
Please remain standing.
the crowd on its feet.
The French Republic Band play the national anthem of the Republic of France.
The Marseillaise.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, the national anthem of the United States of America, sung by a participant of the very special art program, Kenneth Mack, Jr.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight?
Jr., a 13-year-old from East Machita, Louisiana. The Very Special Arts Program is an international organization which provides art programs for the disabled. Last year, this child sang at both the White House and the Vatican. We'll be right back.
And it's in that spirit that the rock itself now moves to a new world of financial service.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Gregory Peck.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. President, Mrs. Reagan, President Mitterrand, Madame Mitterrand, honored guests, and fellow Americans. This ceremony of rededication and restoration will hopefully have a profound effect on the collective conscience of people everywhere, for it underscores one of the deepest yearnings of all mankind, the right of all men to find individual freedom in a free society. In a world where time is measured in milliseconds, 100 years of longevity in any area is worthy of recognition. But this event, marking a century of real and symbolic friendship between our two nations, gives us even greater cause for celebration. Not only does it acknowledge our mutual love of traditional values, but in the larger sense, it represents a priceless gift, a gift of dreams made tangible and visible through a monument dedicated to freedom and liberty. This copper-clad colossus, standing in the harbor with upraised torch and crown of light, was for millions their first glimpse of America. For millions of others entering this promised land from other directions, the image of liberty enlightening the world was a vision they carried deep within their hearts. As with many other great visions, the Statue of Liberty could be said to have had its birth as the result of a death.
In 1865, the assassination of President Lincoln shocked the world. In France, the gifted sculptor, Frédéric Auguste Bartholdi, felt compelled to express his countrymen's deep affection for America with a dramatic gesture. On his first visit here, Providence led him to an abandoned fort in New York Harbor called Bedloe's Island. It was the ideal site for the monumental statue he was planning. In this sketch, done at the time, he named her Liberty Enlightening the World. The lady's torch and radiant crown lighting the way for all who yearn to enter the land of freedom. Returning to France, he soon found the inspiration for the statue's face, his mother. It took 3 years, however, for Bartholdi to complete his design. Construction began in 1876, with funds donated entirely by the French people. Plaster molds of some 300 sections were made to Bartholdi's amazingly accurate specifications. Then copper sheeting was hammered into wooden forms. The entire statue would be comprised of a copper shell, a mere 3/32 of an inch thick. To encourage continued support for this long-term and expensive project, sections were then put on public display. Gustave Eiffel, the brilliant engineer who would soon build his famous tower, was called on to design the statue's iron framework. The virtually hollow structure rose 15 stories, weighed 225 tons, and was ingeniously engineered to withstand winds of 100 miles an hour. In 1884, after 8 years of dedicated effort and a cost of $250,000, the statue was finally completed in Paris. In New York, however, construction of its mammoth pedestal had not yet begun. Only its cornerstone had been set in place. When the statue arrived in New York a year later, packed in 200 crates, The base had not been finished. American donations for completing the work had run out. It was then that Joseph Pulitzer, the newspaper magnate and an immigrant himself, organized a campaign to raise the last $100,000. It would come in pennies, nickels, and dimes, much of it from children. But come it did, and the statue finally gained her foothold in the New World. On a rainy day in 1886, this remarkable gift from the people of France was officially presented to the people of the United States, and a new symbol of hope was given to the world.
Now, to add even greater import to this historic celebration, I'm proud to introduce the President of the Republic of France, François Mitterrand.
President Mitterrand being played onto the stage here on the edge of New York Harbor by his own Garde Républicaine band, the band of the Garde République. President Mitterrand, of course, is going to have some fairly serious conversations while he's here with President Reagan. And then, perhaps by coincidence, will fly on Monday to Moscow, where he will see the General Secretary, Mikhail Gorbachev. It is not unlikely that he shall speak in French. He speaks some English.
Messager du peuple français, j'apporte
as a messenger from the French people,
américain,
I bring to the American people
le salut fraternel
the fraternal
de mon
greetings
pays, la France.
of my country, France.
Il y a 2 siècles,
2 centuries ago,
la France était à vos côtés pour
France
la
was at
conquête
your
de
side
votre indépendance.
when you won your independence.
Il y a 100 ans,
100 years ago,
des milliers et des milliers
thousands
d'enfants
upon
de
thousands
France
of the sons and daughters of France
offraient aux États-Unis d'Amérique
presented the United States of
cette
America
statue, la
with
statue
this
de la
Statue of Liberty,
symbole
today
aujourd'hui
the
de la
symbol
première
of the foremost
de nos valeurs communes.
of our common values.
À votre tour,
You,
vous êtes venus
in your
2
turn,
fois
came twice
au prix de votre sang
at the cost of your own blood
nous aider à
to help us
sauver et notre
to save
indépendance
our independence
et notre liberté.
and our freedom.
Telle est l'histoire
Such
qu'ensemble
is the
nous
history
avons faite.
we have made together,
Telle est l'histoire
and such
qu'ensemble
is the history
nous allons faire.
we are going to make together.
Puissent les enfants de
May
nos
our
enfants
children's children
se retrouver
meet
pour
again
célébrer toujours ensemble dans 100 ans
another 100 years
et
from now
plus longtemps
and
encore
long thereafter
la fête des
to celebrate
hommes libres
still together the
dans un
festival
monde
of
pacifique.
free people in a world at peace.
Il n'y aura pas de repos d'ici là.
In the
pour
meantime,
ceux
there will
qui
be no
croient
respite
que rien ne
for
peut
those who
être
believe
vécu.
that life is not
Si
worth
manque
living
l'air où l'on
unless
respire
the
pour
very
les
air
personnes et pour les
breathes forth
peuples
for individuals
le
and
simple
nations
droit de
the simple
vivre
right
libre.
to live in freedom.
J'exprime au président et à
May
Madame
I convey to President Reagan and Mrs.
les
Reagan
sentiments qu'éprouve
the
à leur
feelings
égard
which the
la
French
nation
nation
française
has for
et la
them,
fierté
as
qui est
well
la
as the
mienne
pride which
en
I
cet
feel
instant,
at this time
porte-parole
as
d'une
spokesman
amitié plus forte
for a friendship
que les
which is
épreuves
stronger
du temps.
than the tests of time.
À vous enfin,
Finally,
Américains
to
qui
all you
m'entendez,
Americans who are listening to me,
je dis
I say
de toute
with
la
all
force
the strength
de mon esprit
of my heart
et de mon
and my
cœur.
mind,
Happy birthday, United States. Happy birthday, Miss Liberty.
As we said, President Mitterrand speaks a little English, but but it is as much as anything a political statement. No matter how kindly disposed French presidents are to America, in their own homeland, it is considered de rigueur, as the French say, to speak French, not English. We'll be right back.
ABC's exclusive coverage of Liberty Weekend will continue.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Kenny Rogers.
Thank you. The United States and France have had a special relationship that dates back to our Revolutionary War. What American child hasn't heard of General Lafayette and the role he played in helping our country obtain its freedom? And what French child hasn't been made aware of the American soldiers who fought and died in the soil of France to preserve that precious commodity called liberty during 2 world wars? We gather here this evening to pay homage to that remarkable friendship that is so gloriously represented by the statue that stands out in the harbor. At the original dedication ceremonies held 100 years ago, President Grover Cleveland said, "We will not forget that liberty has made here her home, nor shall her chosen altar be neglected. A stream of light shall pierce the darkness of ignorance and man's oppression until liberty enlightens the world." And Edward de la Bellay, the French senator and scholar who first conceived the idea for the Statue of Liberty, wrote these words over a century ago: "This Statue of Liberty will preserve among future generations, like a sacred tradition, the eternal friendship of the United States and France." And now it is my pleasure to introduce one of France's outstanding entertainers, who will be joined by a gentleman whose voice has been deemed by President Reagan to be a national treasure. Together they will sing a musical tribute to the vision and the ideals that made the Statue of Liberty possible. Please welcome Mireille Matteau and Andy Williams.
For many years we've stood as one.
Pour la construire il y a 100 ans.
Stood side by side and hand in hand.
La liberté sur l'Atlantique.
Now we can see how far we've come.
Défie le temps.
And where we stand.
C'était un cadeau de Marianne.
100 years ago she came.
La statue Martin d'Eiffel.
A gift of love to shine her light.
Au cœur du monde.
A light of hope.
Au pied.
Forever new.
Des vagues.
Forever bright. Through bad times and sad times, she was there, sweet lady. So many dreams, so many plans.
La haine pourrait l'emporter.
So many visions were conceived.
La liberté est un drapeau.
So many doubted through the years.
Nous rapporter.
So few believe.
La liberté éclaire le monde.
But bit by bit the vision grew.
Mais le monde a les yeux fermés.
If the Statue of Liberty was the light of hope for millions of immigrants, then Ellis Island was the door of hope. It was the last barrier to entrance into the United States and the first step on the road to citizenship. On Ellis Island, which is undergoing a major refurbishing right now, is a man who would like to tell us more about this historic place. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Robert De Niro.
This is Ellis Island, a very precious piece of real estate, and this is my son, Raphael, a very important part of my life. I'm very happy to be at this historical place at this jubilant time with this particular person because I believe we are all destined to remember this moment for years to come. Every parent wants to pass on to his children the things he believes are important, and what could be more important than being a part of history? A century ago, the Statue of Liberty became the symbol of welcome to immigrants arriving in New York Harbor after a long, hard journey. But they were now coming in such vast numbers that an obstacle to their final landing was created to control the human tidal wave. Called Ellis Island, it would serve as processing center for all those crammed into steerage. Yet the delay couldn't diminish their excitement, their joyous anticipation. They had come too far, had suffered too much poverty or persecution in their homelands to let this formality dampen their desire to forge a better life. Between 1892 and 1954, nearly 17 million men, women, and children passed through Ellis Island. In 1907, a record year, overworked officials processed 3,000 people a day. Despite the speed of the procedures during this tumultuous period, there was just reason for fear and doubt among the stateless foreigners. A prevalent eye disease, trachoma, or tuberculosis, or mental illness, if detected, was cause for detention and possible deportation. Remarkably, this fate befell only a small percent of those who entered Ellis Island. Age-old family names, if found unpronounceable by the American registrar, would be changed. But the worst was over. A railroad ticket office was provided for those who had hope of a job or relatives to join beyond New York. So now the moment drew near when these immigrants from Ireland, from Hungary, Italy, Greece, from virtually every European nation and the Caribbean as well, would be ferried back to Manhattan, their new lives soon to begin. These faces should seem familiar, for they are the faces of the parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents of many of us who are looking at them now. Proud, honest, good faces. The faces of our past, present, and future. The human drama of Ellis Island ended 3 decades ago, but it remains an indelible, haunting part of our heritage. One of the reasons today is so special is because Ellis Island is about to be reborn, if only for a brief moment in time. People have gathered here as they have in 44 other cities to prepare for one of the most meaningful moments of their lives. They come to take the oath of citizenship that will make them full-fledged Americans. They are representative of millions who came before them, and each has a story to tell about why and how he came to this moment in time. Some were fleeing from oppression. Some were joining their relatives who were fortunate enough to have arrived earlier. Some came looking for gainful employment, shoemakers and farmers and tailors seeking to ply their trade in an atmosphere of opportunity and respect. And some came with the respect of the world already in their possession, but with a burning desire to dance to a different drummer, to a beat that allowed for growth and freedom of expression. They all harbored dreams of a better life, and sometimes the dreams came true.
The Honorable the Chief Justice of the United States. Oyez, oyez, oyez. All persons having business before the Honorable the Chief Justice of the United States are admonished to draw near and give their attention. God save the United States and this honorable court.
The court recognizes the Attorney General of the United States. Mr. Attorney General.
Mr. Chief Justice, may it please the court, I stand before you tonight on the eve of the celebration of the 100th anniversary of the Statue of Liberty, our most famous symbol of the hopes and aspirations of millions of people who have chosen to make the United States their home. Many of America's most honorable men and women have passed before this aisle in pursuit of freedom on our shores. As loyal citizens, they have served this country with distinction. I am confident that the petitioners gathered here and in courtrooms throughout the country will follow admirably in their footsteps. All of the petitioners have met the statutory requirements for citizenship. They are all persons of good moral character and have agreed to uphold the principles of our Constitution and our form of government. Mr. Chief Justice, I therefore recommend that the oath of citizenship be administered to these petitioners.
Your motion is granted, Mr. Attorney General. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, today's ceremony has a very special meaning for me, and one that I share with all of you and with millions of others. My grandfather, whose name I bear, came to these shores about 145 years ago, as millions had done before and have done since. His father was an Austrian, his mother was Swiss. After they settled in the Middle West, a plague left him an orphan at about age 10. In 1861, he joined the Union Army, and his service during that war earned him the Congressional Medal of Honor, the highest military honor our country can bestow. A century and a half later, his descendants manifest why we are rightly called a nation of immigrants. Mrs. Berger and I have 2 grandchildren who are a mixture of Austrian, Swiss, German, Swedish, English, and Scots. Today we celebrate this great symbol of freedom given to us by the people of France, the people who helped us gain our freedom. That great Lady of Liberty faces not west to our land, but out to the seas as a welcome to those who seek our kind of freedom. Our Constitution is a unique, remarkable instrument. And 200 years ago, it operated to unleash the latent talents and energies and the abilities of every individual who came here, so that each person could develop according to his or her God-given gifts. People were meant to be free. And the great statue that we rededicate today symbolizes not only our freedom, but also the Constitution that guarantees those freedoms and has guaranteed those freedoms for 200 years. It is a symbol not just to the American people, it is a symbol to the people everywhere who want freedom under a system of liberty with order. Now, it is my honor and privilege to ask each of you who seek citizenship to raise your right hand and on this Bible repeat after me. I hereby declare on oath that I renounce all allegiance and fidelity to any foreign prince or potentate, or state or sovereignty, of which I have heretofore been a subject or citizen, that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the laws of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I will bear arms on behalf of the United States when required by law, that I will perform non-combat service in the armed forces of the United States when required by law, that I will perform work of a national importance when required by law, that I take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion. So help me God. Now, my fellow citizens, I congratulate you and ask all present here and in the other ceremonies taking place in the United States to recite with me the Pledge of Allegiance, which is as follows. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Honorable Court is now adjourned.
Judge Mark Americus Constantino to return to the podium to close out tonight's ceremony.
Now that the Chief Justice has new citizens of this great country, one thing is not to do is
44 locations across the country, as Chief Justice Berger said. Thousands of new American citizens as America opens its arms. Once again, almost one of his last official acts as Chief Justice. He will soon retire to chair the commission to celebrate the bicentennial of the Constitution. We'll be right back.
Ladies and gentlemen, the chairman and executive producer of Liberty Weekend, Mr. David Wolper.
Thank you. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to Liberty Weekend. During the course of the next few days, we will try to impart some sense of the profound and pleasant meaning this statue has for countless American and freedom-loving people everywhere. If we succeed in our task, it will be due in no small part to the volunteers and staff of Liberty Weekend, whose generosity of spirit and talent surpassed our fondest hopes. My gratitude to them is matched by my admiration for their enthusiasm and devotion. We hope you will all enjoy Liberty Weekend and participate in all the events that we have planned. Although it's been a tough road to travel at times, getting here this day has made it all worthwhile. Now I have the honor to introduce to you a man who heads the branch of government responsible for keeping the Statue of Liberty as bright and meaningful as she is tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, the Secretary of the Interior, the Honorable Donald Hodel.
Donald Hodel, the Secretary of the Interior, following David Wolper, who has had quite a lot to contend with over this week and has stood up well under it all.
Mr. President and my fellow Americans, welcome to the restored Statue of Liberty, the symbol of freedom and hope for all mankind. The statue has particular relevance to the many immigrants whose first glimpse of America was the site of that towering cathedral to liberty, that monument to hope, but she is treasured by all Americans. We will preserve our God-given liberty for future generations by remaining strong as a nation, by making plain our determination never to let our freedom slip away, and by being an effective ally to those who seek freedom's blessings. We honor our liberty by preserving its symbols, such as the statue. Under your leadership, Mr. President, there is a renewed sense of pride in America. Lady Liberty no longer is confined to her island, but instead every day her silhouette and her spirit enter our homes and our lives. As a result, the people of America made this private sector, non-governmental restoration effort successful. I want to pay special tribute to Lee Iacocca. He brought to the Statue of Liberty Ellis Island Foundation a profound personal commitment. Millions of Americans responded by providing the financial support necessary to enable the torch of liberty to continue to enlighten the world. Lee, the American people join me in expressing our gratitude. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce the chairman of the Statue of Liberty Ellis Island Foundation, Lee Iacocca.
Lee Iacocca, something of a folk hero to a great many Americans as a result of his participation in this. We should also tell you in fairness that Secretary Hodel, who just paid tribute, fired him from the Centennial Commission some weeks ago, some months ago.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Well, tonight concludes a four-year labor of love. 4 years ago, President Reagan wisely chose to place the job of saving America's most sacred symbol in the hands of the American people themselves. And the people responded from their hearts and from their pocketbooks. I'm proud to announce that just in time for this celebration tonight, we have surpassed our goal of $265 million. Now that's a huge number for a private fundraising effort. But more important than how much is from whom. And the answer to that is from everybody. from millionaires and school kids, from companies and civic groups, from people in Europe and from people behind the Iron Curtain, even from Vietnamese boat people. It came $5 million at a time, and it came 5 cents at a time. To all of you, from all the people who worked on this great project, we say thank you. And now tonight, we pay you back. We relight the torch, but we do more than that. We also restore the flame of liberty. We remember the millions drawn here by that flame, and we renew our commitment to the ideals that kept it burning. It is fitting that the man who will unveil the statue is a man who has contributed so much to the rebirth of the spirit of patriotism in America. He made it fashionable to be a patriot again, and he set the tone for what we do here tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my high privilege and honor to introduce the President of the United States and Mrs. Reagan.
A standing ovation from the audience as the President gets ready to give us the highlight of the evening, the unveiling of the statue.
We should tell people, Barbara, there are really two moments like this in the evening. The President at this point, along with Mrs. Reagan, will unveil the Statue of Liberty again in a formal way. Later on, he will light the torch.
Thank you, and Lee Iacocca, thank you on behalf of all of America. President and Madame Mitterrand, my fellow Americans, the iron workers from New York and New Jersey who came here to begin restoration work were at first puzzled and a bit put off to see foreign workers, craftsmen from France, arrive. Jean Ouillard, the leader of the French workers, said his countrymen understood. After all, he asked, how would Frenchmen feel if Americans showed up to help restore the Eiffel Tower? But as they came to know each other, these Frenchmen and Americans, affections grew, and so too did perspectives. The Americans were reminded that Miss Liberty, like the many millions she's welcomed to these shores, is of foreign birth, the gift of workers, farmers and shopkeepers and children who donated hundreds of thousands of francs to send her here. They were the ordinary people of France. This statue came from their pockets and from their hearts. The French workers, too, made discoveries. Monsieur Ouillard, for example, normally lives in a 150-year-old cottage in a small French town. But for the last year, he's been riding the subway through Brooklyn. A study in contrasts, he said. Contrasts indeed. But he has also told the newspapers that he and his countrymen learned something else at Liberty Island. For the first time, they worked in proximity with Americans of Jewish, black, Italian, Irish, Russian, Polish, and Indian backgrounds. Fascinating, he said, to see different ethnic and national types work and live so well together. Well, it's how we like to think of America. And it's good to know that Miss Liberty is still giving life to the dream of a new world where old antagonisms could be cast aside and people of every nation could live together as one. It's especially fitting that this lesson should be relived and relearned here by Americans and Frenchmen. President Mitterrand, the French and American people have forged a special friendship over the course of 2 centuries. Yes, in the 1700s, France was the midwife of our liberty. In 2 world wars, America stood with France as she fought for her life and for civilization. And today, Mr. President, with infinite gentleness, your countrymen tend the final resting places, marked now by rows of white crosses and stars, of more than 60,000 Americans who remain on French soil. A reminder since the days of Lafayette of our mutual struggles and sacrifices for freedom. So tonight, as we celebrate the friendship of our 2 nations, we also pray, may it ever be so. God bless America, and vive la France. And yet, my fellow Americans, it is not only the friendship of two peoples, but the friendship of all peoples that brings us here tonight. We celebrate something more than the restoration of this statue's physical grandeur. Another worker here, Scott Aronson, a marble restorer, has put it well. I grew up in Brooklyn and never went to the Statue of Liberty. But when I first walked in there to work, I thought about my grandfathers coming through here. And which of us does not think of other grandfathers and grandmothers from so many places around the globe for whom this statue was the first glimpse of America? She was silhouetted very clear. One of them wrote about standing on deck as their ship entered New York Harbor. We passed her very slowly. Of course, we had to look up. She was beautiful. Another talked of how all the passengers rushed to one side of the boat for a fast look at their new home. And at her, everybody was crying. The whole boat bent toward her. She was beautiful with the early morning light. To millions returning home, especially from foreign wars, she was also special. A young World War captain of artillery described how on a troop ship returning from France, even the most hard-bitten veteran had trouble blinking back the tears. I've never seen anything that looked so good, that doughboy, Harry Truman, wrote to his fiancée Bess back in Independence, Missouri, as the Liberty Lady in New York Harbor. And that's why tonight we celebrate this mother of exiles who lifts her light beside the golden door. Many of us have seen the picture of another worker here, iron or tool belt around his waist, balanced on a narrow metal rod of scaffolding, leaning over to place a kiss on the forehead of Miss Liberty. Tony Serassi, the grandson of immigrant Italians, said it was something he was proud to do, something to tell my grandchildren. Robert Kearney feels the same way. At work on the statue after a serious illness, he gave $10,000 worth of commemorative pins to those who visited here. Part of the reason, he says, was an earlier construction job over in Hoboken, and his friend named Blackie. They could see the harbor from the building where they were working on, and every morning Blackie would look over the water, give a salute, and say, "That's my gal." Well, the truth is, she's everybody's gal. We sometimes forget that even those who came here first to settle the new land were also strangers. I've spoken before of the tiny Arabella, a ship at anchor just off the Massachusetts coast. A little group of Puritans huddled on the deck. And then John Winthrop, who would later become the first governor of Massachusetts, reminded his fellow Puritans there on that tiny deck that they must keep faith with their God, that the eyes of all the world were upon them, and that they must not forsake the mission that God had sent them on, and they must be a light unto the nations of all the world, a shining city upon a hill. Call it mysticism, if you will. I have always believed there was some divine providence that placed this great land here between the two great oceans to be found by a special kind of people from every corner of the world who had a special love for freedom and a special courage that enabled them to leave their own land, leave their friends and their countrymen, and come to this new and strange land to build a new world of peace and freedom and hope. Lincoln spoke about hope as he left the hometown he would never see again to take up the duties of the presidency and bring America through a terrible civil war. At each stop on his long train ride to Washington, the news grew worse. The nation was dividing. His own life was in peril. On he pushed, undaunted. In Philadelphia, he spoke in Independence Hall, where 85 years earlier, the Declaration of Independence had been signed. He noted that much more had been achieved there than just independence from Great Britain. It was, he said, hope to the world, future for all time. Well, that is the common thread that binds us to those Quakers on the tiny deck of the Arabella, to the beleaguered farmers and landowners signing the Declaration in Philadelphia, in that hot Philadelphia hall, to Lincoln on a train, ready to guide us people through the conflagration, to all the millions crowded in the steerage who passed this lady and wept at the sight of her, and those who've worked here in the scaffolding with their hands and with their love. Jean Weir, Scott Aronson, Tony Sarasi, Robert Kearney, and so many others. We're bound together because, like them, we too dare to hope. Hope that our children will always find here the land of liberty in a land that is free. We dare to hope, too, that we'll understand our work can never be truly done until every man, woman, and child shares in our gift, in our hope, and stands with us in the light of liberty, a light that tonight will shortly cast its glow upon her as it has upon us for 2 centuries, keeping faith with a dream of long ago and guiding millions still to a future of peace and freedom. And now we will unveil that gallant lady. Thank you, and God bless you all. Nancy?
Around New York Harbor, people on their feet, clearly agreeing with President Truman, who wrote to his wife, "I've never seen anything that looked so good." Symbol of a nation, symbol of an idea. That is the unveiling of the Statue of Liberty, and later this evening, President Reagan will return to the podium to light the torch.